It's no secret for anyone paying attention that comic book adaptation has been kind of wavering these last couple of years. Meanwhile, the video game adaptations that we've been seeing coming out seem to actually be doing pretty good and not only achieving success at the box office like Super Mario Brothers here, but some of the works have also been getting critical praise for how it's actually adapted too, like The Last of Us, which is leading a lot of people to think that video game adaptations are going to be the next big thing after comic book movies are kind of taking a backseat to all this. And I'm not saying comic book movies are going to go away 100% entirely, because that's never going to be the case. It's kind of like the Western, it never went away. It just isn't as prominent as what it used to be. And I think we're going to see video game adaptations become the next big thing. I've said that on this channel before, and I'll probably say it again too. But because of this, a lot of studios are scrambling to try to gobble up IPs in order to try to figure out what they're actually going to do and what they're actually going to adapt and how they're going to go about it. And I think a lot of the success is predicated on adapting the right properties that lend themselves to the medium shift. And that's where we're getting news like this. Until Dawn video game movie in the works, and this is coming from the Hollywood Reporter, and it's going to be directed by David S. Sandberg. And I think this is actually a pretty good choice for a video game movie to adapt to the big screen. The Shazam helmer has signed a deal to direct Until Dawn, an adaptation of the PlayStation horror video game being made by Screen Gems and PlayStation Productions. I like the choice of David F. Sandberg directing this because a lot of people might just know of him from the Shazam movies, so they think that's kind of an odd idea to have someone like that direct this. But he really did just get his start doing horror movies. In fact, that's pretty much what his first movie in the industry was the 2016 Lights Out, which was a horror movie based off of a short film that he posted to his YouTube page. And in fact, that YouTube page was basically just him doing a bunch of horror short films and behind the scenes aspect of doing those. And he still maintains that YouTube page. It's under the name Pony Smasher. But this time he also posts more of the behind the scenes aspect, kind of the similar content, but just scaled up. Instead of just doing a bunch of short films, it's also Hollywood productions too. So I think that's pretty cool for people who are kind of interested in how the industry works from behind the scenes. Going back into the article, Gary Dauberman, the screenwriter behind the hit horror franchises It, Annabelle, and The Nun, is doing a pass on the script originally written by Blair Butler, who previously wrote the Sony vampire thriller The Invitation. I want to say those are the best horror movies, if I'm being completely honest. It was decent, but Annabelle and The Nun, it was just like, those are what I would call a January horror movie. Not the greatest, but at the same time, they can be fun if you just turn off your brain and just go with it, maybe watch it with some drunk friends or something like that, which I do think is appropriate considering that's essentially what Until Dawn is as far as the story goes. It's basically just a horror video game that's taking bits and pieces from a lot of other horror franchises and just mashing them together and just trying to have fun with it. First released in 2015, Until Dawn is an interactive horror video game that follows 8 friends and frenemies who are brought together at a remote mountain retreat. Not necessarily the most original concept for a horror game or horror property, but again, this is just taking bits and pieces from a lot of other things. With live or die scenarios featuring a mysterious killer, cannibalistic wendigos, a cable car, and a long ago mining cave-in that reverberates into the present day, the members of the group must fight through their fears if they hope to all make it through the night in one piece. The reason I think this would actually work as a movie is because the game itself is already very cinematic in its presentation. And what I mean is it already feels like a movie because that's essentially what it is. It's an interactive movie where the player occasionally just makes choices on behalf of the character. And depending on those choices, it can either lead to everyone surviving the night or no one surviving. I'm not sure what story they'll tell with this movie. It's probably going to be a combination of the two, but I think something cool that they could do would be what Clue did, where you shoot multiple versions of certain situations and then different endings, and actually have different showings at different theaters depending on which one it is. Maybe that's a little too gimmicky or whatever. I don't know if the studio would necessarily go for that, but I do think it's a cool concept, or at the very least they can shoot different versions of that as extras on the Blu-ray. But either way, if they had like a modest budget for this, and I'm talking like $50-60 million, don't do too crazy with it. Just adapt it and make it a fun, cheap horror movie. And I think people can actually enjoy it and it can be successful, but I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see when this comes out.